get together and learn from other Vaishnavis about topics that enrich our Krishna conscious lives. And also in this time of physical distancing, it's just so nice to be together in this virtual space. So thank you for coming. As a heads up, this Sangha will be recorded and posted on YouTube so that other Vaishnavis can tune in later. So if there's ever something that you'd like to share in the group, but would prefer not to share publicly, just let myself or Tiffany know. And we're happy to pause the recording for you if you'd like. So I'll introduce our special guest today. Leading us in the Sangha today is Shyamala Kishori Dasi. Shyamala Kishori grew up in ISKCON of New Goloka in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Her parents are disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and she is a disciple of His Holiness Indrajumya Swami. Shyamala has a master's in women's studies and a certificate in gerontology from the University of Florida. She's also a certified hypnotherapist. How cool is that? Shyamala Kishori served on the board of Krishna House in Gainesville, Florida for several years and continues to be involved with the community there. She also volunteers with the local hospice. She enjoys writing, kirtan, and visits to Vrindavan, and don't we all? So today she's going to talk to us about how we can deepen our gratitude on the Bhakti path. And I can think of no better way to start the new year than to count our blessings. So let's all welcome Shyamala Kishori, and we'll kick it off to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored and excited to be here with everyone because I've been, following this for the number of almost a year. I think that this has been going on, and it's just so, I felt so honored to be invited to speak. So thank you for having me. This is a topic that is something that's been on my mind for several months, and I think it's very relevant for everyone. Just to start off, I want to mention in a little anecdote that happened to me in 2009. First of all, can you hear me okay? Is the volume? Yeah. Okay. So in 2009, I was in a car accident, and I was actually riding with my brother. We were going to a dancing event. We like to do like ballroom dancing at that time. And so we were going to this event. We were all kind of in this mood of enjoyment, and we're going to have a fun weekend. We're going to Virginia. And then on the way there, we got into a car accident. And I broke my leg in that it and was out for the summer. Couldn't walk, definitely couldn't dance, was on crutches for months. And it wasn't until that happened that I appreciated the ability to walk and to move around without crutches. Just appreciating the use of my legs. It was something I had taken for granted. And so the reason I mentioned this story, I think that everyone here probably can relate to that experience of not appreciating something until it's taken away, right? Like it's just part of our life, we become complacent. And that's the nature of the materially conditioned mind. I think that I sort of see it running on two tracks. One is negativity, where we often focus on things that are going bad, and we'll get together with our friends and say, oh yeah, isn't the weather so terrible? Did you hear such and such? And it's like a tendency of the materially conditioned mind to focus on negative. And on the other side, on the other, you could say, track of this materially conditioned mind is complacency, the tendency not to appreciate something until it's gone. And so gratitude has, in recent years, has popped up as a very popular subject, right? I think we all notice that it's in magazines and the media and journal articles. More and more research is being done on the positive effects of gratitude on mental health, physical health, stress levels, happiness, contentment, all those things. So what I want to do today in this talk, I was thinking about how, for myself, and maybe some of you can relate, is anytime something becomes common, like gratitude is now a common word, and it's sort of something that is so common that it can also become we can become complacent about gratitude because now it's so prevalent in our culture. There's this term hackneyed, and it means lacking significance through having been overused, unoriginal and trite, right? So even though we know gratitude is all the benefits of it materially, and then what to speak of spiritually, it can become just this thing, another thing. Oh yeah, I got to do my gratitude, so it can become hackneyed. And so what I hope to do with this presentation in this workshop is to kind of stir up new ways of thinking about it so that it sort of shifts us out of maybe a complacency even about the topic of gratitude. So hopefully that will, there'll be some new things for us to think about and focus on in our discussion. So I'm gonna quickly share with you the flow of today's talk. So here we have kind of what's going to happen. So just so you like kind of a roadmap for today's workshop, so you know what's going to happen. So first is I'm just going to share some examples to set us off thinking about examples from Shastra and Prabhupada. And then connecting gratitude with other qualities that we aspire for. And I'm going to specifically focus on 3 of them that are linked with the qualities of a Vaishnavi, of a devotee of Krishna. And then we're going to do the kind of practical component of it and the interactive component of the talk. And that's going to be broken up into personal gratitude. So looking at techniques for deepening our gratitude on a personal level and dealing with complacency when it comes up, maybe some tips on that, and thinking about, can we feel grateful even in distress and suffering? And then we'll do a breakout group there to cover one of those, a question related to that. And then we're going to go to interpersonal gratitude, which looks at how we can actually apply gratitude in action among each other and creating a culture of gratitude within our communities. And so we'll do a discussion about that too. So I want to mention that if you have paper and pencil or pen, that if you could have that near you, that's going to be helpful for this talk, because what I plan to do is give us a few minutes of reflection time before the breakout groups so that we can really think about something, just a few minutes, but enough to sort of settle and think about something before, having to share. Because I've noticed for myself that when I'm suddenly put into a breakout room, it can be hard to just come up with something. So we'll do that before the breakout groups. And also, if you want to jot down any of the techniques or the tips that seem to resonate with you for later use, then that would be helpful to have that with you. So one more thing I want to show you on this slideshow for now is the definition of gratitude from the Oxford Dictionary. First of all, the Sanskrit word for gratitude is kritagya. I only learned that recently, actually, when I actually searched in the, I believe it was either Vani quotes or the Vedabase. I was searching for gratitude and quotes from Prabhupada and so on. And it seems like this Sanskrit word kritagya is not used very often. So it was in a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. And so I wanted to just mention that Sanskrit for gratitude. And so the dictionary definition, I'm breaking it up into 2 parts intentionally, because when we look at our personal and interpersonal, they kind of fall under these 2 facets of gratitude. So the first part is the quality of being thankful. And that's really a feeling within ourselves, right? Our own personal gratitude. And then the second component of gratitude is a readiness to show appreciation and to return kindness. So that's the action, right? So the first one's like the attitude of gratitude, which Vaisheshika Prabhu says, an attitude of gratitude. And then the second one would be like gratitude in action. So, and those kind of fall with the personal and interpersonal. So you'll see how those, that definition, I'll mention it again later, but I wanted to start us off with that. Okay, now I'm gonna be back here. So just a second. So starting off with the Shastra, like thinking about gratitude in the Shastra. First, I wanted to mention that there's a difference between Dharmic gratitude, which is just the basic gratitude that we are meant to give just to be human, just to be decent humans. We need to appreciate the things we have received, right? And that's considered Dharmic gratitude. And that's written, Prabhupada writes about it, and it's described in the Shastra too. Prabhupada said, it's kind of a way of, when I think about, okay, what am I receiving? It forces me to step out of this consciousness of I, me, and mine. It's all about me. And to think, who else is contributing to my life? And so that's just the very basic step in being a human being. So in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3 of that verse I had mentioned earlier, Kritagya, Prabhupada says in that purport, anyone with a simple heart of gratefulness must be Krishna conscious and offer devotional service to the Lord. Ungrateful persons are those who do not understand how much benefit they are deriving by the arrangement of the Lord. They enjoy the sunshine and moonshine, and they get water free of charge, yet they do not feel grateful, but simply go on enjoying these gifts of the Lord. Therefore, they must be called thieves and rogues. Prabhupada has a very a way of speaking that really cuts to the point, right? So if we're not offering gratitude to for all these gifts that we're receiving, air that we're breathing, for the water we're drinking, for the food we get, then we're just thieves who are taking from God without appreciating. So that's basic Dharmic gratitude of we need to show our reciprocate. We need to reciprocate with what Krishna is giving us. And in a lecture actually Prabhupada gave on he was speaking on the 7th canto, and he says, one who is intelligent, their prayer should be simply gratitude, that my dear Father, you have supplied the necessities of my life so much amply, I must be feeling very grateful. So these preparations I have made for you, and he's speaking about food, right? These preparations I have made for you because it is your goods. You have supplied these grains, so you kindly first of all take, then I will take. So this is Krishna Prasadam, acknowledgement. So his definition in this context of Krishna Prasadam is acknowledgement. So I thought that was really beautiful. It's dovetailing everything we have and offering it back to Krishna and in thankfulness. So now shifting over to, that's just the basic duty of a person in this world, to feel grateful. Then moving on to transcendental gratitude. That's the next level, right? So in the Shastra, I'm going to share a few examples, and you can also, if something comes to mind afterwards, I'll ask if anybody has another example. So Dhruva Maharaj, when he was at the end of his life, he was, you remember how the plane, Transcendental airplane, came to get him at the end of his life? So one of those like flower and airplanes. And Prabhupada writes in the, this is from the 4th canto, and the airplane was just about to start. I thought that was kind of humorous, like the airplane's just about to start when he remembered his poor mother, Suniti. He thought to himself, how shall I go alone to the Vaikuntha planet and leave behind my poor mother? So he was reflecting on how his mother had been the person to instill this desire for the spiritual path. And so he's thinking, oh, wait, I don't want to go without her. Like, what about her? And so he's feeling this gratitude towards his mother. And he's wanting to pay her back spiritually by also having her get those spiritual results of going back to the spiritual world. And so it's described that the Vishnu Dutas were pacified Dhruva and said, don't worry, your mother's over there. And they must have gestured or something. So he saw that his mother was in another flower airplane, also going up to the spiritual sky. So they were actually going together, and therefore he was ready to go as long as his mother was coming with him. So his gratitude for his mother transcended just the basic gratitude that we have for a mother. Of course, we're all thankful to our mothers for everything they've done. But when your mother has helped you spiritually, what to speak of the amount of gratitude, right? So he's Dhruva is demonstrating that. Now let's look at some examples of how Krishna is grateful. So Krishna, in the 10th canto, there's this verse, 10th canto, chapter 48, text 26. The translation is, the Lord is kritagya. So you remember that word, right? The kritagya, grateful for whatever little worship a devotee offers. And even if the devotee forgets, the Lord does not. So I'm going to read that again because it's such a beautiful verse. The Lord is kritagya, grateful for whatever little worship a devotee offers. And even if the devotee forgets, the Lord does not. So at one point, Sachinanda Maharaj, in one of his lectures said, Bhakti, the process of Bhakti is very hope-giving. So when you read a verse, when I read a verse like this, I feel so much hope. I think, okay, wow, he's going to remember even the small things and he'll never forget them. It's so encouraging, right? So Krishna is so magnanimous with his gratitude. There's an anecdote from the Hare Krishna Explosion, which is a book by Hayagriva Prabhu. So he says in there that there was this incident with the Swamiji told them, they called him the Swamiji, right? So Prabhupada, the Swamiji said, if Krishna sees you're taking one step toward him, he will take 10 toward you. He's so happy to see you turn to him. He is more eager to see us return to Godhead than we are to go. So yeah, so that's, if you ever need to know where the reference for that is, it's in that book, Hare Krishna Explosion. Because I had always heard that, the 10 steps, Krishna will take 10 steps towards us. So again, we see Krishna so generous. And there's that, of course, the Bhagavad Gita verse that we're all familiar with, that if we just offer something small, like a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, those are all tiny things. Imagine if it was your birthday and someone came to your door, like a friend, and they came in with a leaf, like from the street, like, or a cup of water, and said, happy birthday. We would probably not, that wouldn't register as something very valuable to us, but Krishna sees the item itself is not important. What Krishna is taking from the item, what Krishna is taking from us is our love. So for him, it's what we offer is not as important as the love we put into it. So of course, there's many examples of this in the stories between Krishna and his devotees. And one of them that immediately comes to mind is Krishna and Sudama. So, and for those, was anybody here, show of hands, was anybody here for the, did anybody attend the Govardhan retreat? The recent Govardhan retreat? Yeah? Okay, so one person, yeah. So, so there was a really nice seminar by Burijan Prabhu on Sudama Brahmana, and he talked about this pastime, kind of breaking it up in really detailed way. And there's that scene where he has that little bag of, it's a torn cloth. The bag is made from a little torn cloth. They were so poor that his wife went begging for the little gift for Krishna, and it was broken pieces of rice, or kind of that flat rice. And so they had wrapped that into a little tiny cloth bag, and Sudama felt so embarrassed he didn't want to offer it because he felt like it was unofferable. And Krishna noticed that Sudama kind of had it behind his back. He was feeling shame having that gift. And Krishna told Sudama that actually there's some of the acharyas comment on this story, and Krishna is telling Sudama, I look for the love, I take the love. And so I want the love of my devotees, something like that. And so he snatched the bag and took some of the rice from Sudama and was enjoying that. It was just, this is a very, very simple offering. And he was enjoying it so much that Rukmini actually had to stop him from eating more, and his wife Rukmini. So that's one example. And then another example is where this is such a sweet pastime, where Vidura, who is a devotee that's mentioned in the Mahabharata, and his wife Sulabha, they invited Krishna. Krishna came to their house for lunch one day, and they were so excited. Can you just imagine if Krishna came to your house for lunch, how you would be just so much anticipatory, we call it anticipatory anxiety or whatever. We want to serve so well, right? And so they were so filled with this excitement and delight that Krishna had come, that they, in their kind of hypnotic spell, you could say, of just like absorption in Krishna, Vidura's wife peeled the banana and handed the banana peel to Vidura, who then proceeded to hand it to Krishna. Instead of the banana, they gave the peel. And Krishna very lovingly started eating that banana peel. And it took a little time, and then they realized, suddenly they realized, oh no, he's eating the banana peel, and they took it back. There's a beautiful scene of this in the Mahabharat TV series that some of you might have seen at some point. It's very beautifully done. And if you want to contact me later, I can find that for you. It's actually on YouTube, and there's a beautiful song with it, and there's that scene where Krishna's enjoying that banana peel, and the devotees, his love for his devotees proceeds all formality. And then finally, the story of Shabari, right? So this elderly ascetic woman who was in the Ram Leela. She was waiting for Ram to visit, and every day she didn't know when he was coming, because there was no like social media announcements or anything. She just kind of was every day expecting maybe today. So she would create a whole, she would pick berries for Ram, have flowers decorating her pathway, and just create, imagining as if he would come that day and preparing in that way. So she would actually go about picking berries, fruits for Ram, and she wanted to make sure that they were okay, that they were tasty. So she would bite into them and make sure, like, okay, this one's sweet, put it in my basket. And so when Ram and Lakshman came to her home, Ram was eating them with, like, he was so happy to receive this gift from his devotee. He was eating them with gusto, you could say. Lakshman, his brother, stopped Ram and said, wait, these berries and these fruits they have been bitten off of. They're like not complete. They're dirty. And Ram actually responded to Lakshman at that time. He said this quote, of all the many types of foods that I've tasted in my life, nothing can equal these berries offered with such devotion. Taste them, and only then you will know. What matters not is the object offered, but the devotion with which they are offered. So what a beautiful quote. And this demonstrates again Krishna's mood of receiving the love. He was tasting that love and enjoying it. And this is in all of his incarnations. So you can see in Ram Leela too. And then I'd like to end with two more quotes discussing Krishna. These are really beautiful quotes. One is from the Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto from Maharaj Nimi. It says that, this is from a purport actually. When a living entity offers loving service to the Lord is immediately satisfied, and in return, he will give even his own self to the surrendered soul. Even his own self. And then here's a quote from Prabhupada's lecture in 1973, where he says, instead of offering directly one flower to Krishna, this shows, this quote is related to Radharani now. So Radharani is even more like, right? So Krishna's considered the most compassionate. Radharani is even more compassionate, even more grateful, you could say. So here's a quote to show that. So Prabhupada says, instead of offering your flower directly to Krishna, you just put it in the hands of Radharani. My mother Radharani, if you kindly take this flower and offer it to Krishna. Oh, Radharani says, oh, you have brought a flower? Krishna said, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, right? Offer me a leaf of flower. But don't try to offer Krishna directly. Just offer it through Radharani. It will be very much appreciated by Radharani. So that's even, so another, even Radharani is even more generous in her gratitude and appreciation of our small offerings. So now I'd like to just mention a few things from Prabhupada to demonstrate how he showed his gratitude. So, and there's so many instances, but I just chose a few. So there's, everybody here has seen the Krishna book, and in that dedication, in the front of the book, Prabhupada expresses his gratitude to his father. So he says, To my father, Gaur Mohan Dey, a pure devotee of Krishna, who raised me as a Krishna conscious child from the beginning of my life. In my boyhood ages, he instructed me how to play the mridanga. He gave me Radha Krishna deities to worship, and he gave me Jagannath Rath to duly observe the festival as my childhood play. So he arranged for that cart that Prabhupada could do a little Jagannath Rath Yatra ceremony. He was kind to me, and I imbibed from him the ideas later on solidified by my spiritual master, the Eternal Father. I was particularly struck by those words, he was kind to me, that Prabhupada included that in there. He was appreciating not only all the wonderful spiritual things that his father did to him, but also his father's kindness. And yeah, that's what when we're interacting with our family members or with our children or anybody, that is what will stay with them, our kindness. So, and then in another, so this is a, let's see, Prabhupada's conversation. So he's saying again, this is again about his father, right? So he says, I'm very much indebted to my father. He's telling the devotees. My father used to receive many saintly persons at our home, and to every one of them he used to say, kindly bless my son so that he may become a servant of Radharani. That was his only ambition. So again, he was appreciating his father. And at other times, of course, he appreciated his mother as well. So then I wanted to share, okay, so now Prabhupada's gratitude to George Harrison, which I'm sure we're all familiar with as well, because it's also in the Krishna book. So in the preface, Prabhupada says, my grateful acknowledgement is due to George Harrison, Shriman George Harrison, who is now chanting Hare Krishna, for his liberal contribution of $19,000, which at the time was a considerable amount more, to meet the entire cost of printing this volume. May Krishna bestow upon this nice boy further advancement in Krishna consciousness. And then finally, I'd like to share a few things where Prabhupada is, first here's another little anecdote from the Hare Krishna explosion. And this one we're also familiar with, where in 1966, there was the storefront, small room that they were all listening to Prabhupada. He's giving a lecture, and suddenly a white bearded Bowery bum, this is the words of Hayagriva, he enters and walks down the middle of the room. We sit in confused silence. He approaches the Swami. What to do? They were thinking maybe they should do something. The old beggar is wearing a raincoat and battered hat. In his hands are paper hand towels and 2 rolls of toilet paper. Without speaking, he walks past the Swami and carefully places the hand towels by the sink and the toilet paper on the floor beneath. So there's a little tiny bathroom to the side of the room. And so he placed it there. Then, clearing his throat and muttering something, he turns and walks out. Just see, the Swami says with satisfaction, he may not be in order, but he has just begun his devotional service. Just see how naturally it comes. That is the process. Whatever we have, it doesn't matter what, we must offer it to Krishna. So he's appreciating that little tiny, you could say kind of insignificant gift. Demonstrating how devotees are grateful even for small services that they see. And now I want to share two things where Prabhupada, 2 quotes from Prabhupada that demonstrate his gratitude toward his disciples. So here's a letter that I discovered when I was searching about gratitude. I came across this letter that he had written to Narayan Maharaj in 1967. So he had sent this letter over to India. And in that letter, he wrote, my disciples here are God send. They are all more than my father and mother. They are taking so much care for me that I shall never be able to repay the debts. I hope to survive by the prayers of the boys. Otherwise, I would have died on the day when the stroke was so severe. All the boys in 3 branches in New York, San Francisco, and Montreal prayed for me to Sri Krishna and chanted the whole night. And with vow, they fasted, and I'm sure only for their prayer I am on the path of recovery. I cannot express my gratitude for their sincere love for me, and I can only pray that Sri Krishna may bless them with advanced Krishna consciousness. It reminds me of when Krishna is telling the gopis, I cannot repay you. Please just be satisfied with your service. It's the same mood. Prabhupada saying, I just hope that I cannot ever repay them, but I can only pray that Krishna will fill them up with, bless them with their Krishna consciousness, right? And then another letter Prabhupada saying to a disciple, he says, a letter to Keshava Prabhu, he says in 1972, by distributing my books profusely, you are giving me great encouragement to translate. You are all helping me to fulfill the order with which Guru Maharaj gave me. So I'm so much grateful to you, and I'm sure Krishna will bless you 1,000,000 times over for doing this work. So when I was reading these, I was feeling even more appreciation for all the devotees who came, the first devotees who came and assisted Srila Prabhupada, the first generation of devotees, you know, and you can see Prabhupada had so much gratitude towards them for their just their sacrifice, what they gave. So that concludes the first part about just wanting to share some examples from Shastra. And if anybody has another example that comes to mind, if you want to just type it in the chat, like the name of the story or a person or. Okay, so we'll see if those come in, and now I'm going to move on to the next part about connecting the gratitude to 3 other Vaishnavi qualities. So, and these are going to be being conscious, humility, and contentment or non-envy. So those are the ones I'm going to connect it to. So gratitude is linked with these and cannot be, they're kind of, they go hand in hand. They can't go, they have to go together. It's interesting to see that. So the first one is being conscious, or as today it's very popularly known, mindfulness, right? So there's a big movement of mindfulness now, which is often in the Buddhist tradition is very, very common discussion. So being conscious, like Krishna consciousness, right? So the whole movement is about being conscious of Krishna. So this awareness, the devotee is conscious. So gratitude, in order to be grateful, we first need to notice what's around us, and in order to appreciate it. And that requires being conscious, being aware, like being mindful of the gifts that we have. So I want to tell you a little story here with an incident that I had when I was maybe like 20 years old. I was traveling with my sister and a few other devotees with Bhakti Charu Maharaj in, okay, I'm gonna see something in the chat first. So what comes to mind for me, says Tiffany, is the recording that has been going around the last year of Prabhupada telling his disciples how grateful he is for them and how they were sent by his Guru Maharaj. And he starts to cry. Yes. Though it has been sent to me several times, I could only listen to it once because it made me cry deeply. Yes, it's very touching. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. There's a recording of that. I don't remember which year that was, but I've also heard it. It's very, very moving. So going back to the story. So I was with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and my sister and a couple other devotees were traveling with Maharaj in Europe. And we had just arrived in Italy, and the Milano temple. Just curious, has anybody been there before? Okay, no. So it's a beautiful big temple, and Maharaj was sitting, the Vyasa-san was near the front, and it was like a welcome lecture, I guess. He was just arrived and he was going to give a lecture, maybe a Sunday feast, and the temple room was packed. And Maharaj, I was sitting kind of near the front, and Maharaj said, okay, it was near the beginning. He said, who here is so grateful to be here? If you are, raise both of your hands, both of your arms, and say Hari Bol. So he asked, whoever here is happy to be here, raise your hands and say Hari Bol. And I, being let's say distracted and not present in that moment, not conscious. I was thinking future. I was thinking, oh, this would make a beautiful photo where Maharaj is raising both arms and saying Haribol and looking so joyful. So I took out my camera, which I was, taking pictures a lot, and I snapped a photo as Maharaj raised his arms and said Haribol. So then after, you can just imagine like what's going to happen. So then after everybody said Haribol and there was a silence, and Maharaj looked right at me and he said, so at the time my name was Chintamani. So he said, so Chintamani, you're not grateful to be here? And this is the, it's funny, when I still think about it, I can feel that in my stomach, that, ooh, that sinking feeling where Maharaj was chastising me in a very loving way. He was smiling, but he was indicating that because I had been taking a photo, I wasn't, present. And I said, oh yes, I am. And he said, well, he said something like, okay, well, now you can raise your arms and Haribol and we'll all take pictures of you. And he laughed and everybody laughed. And it was a humorous thing, but the lesson of it and the reminder in that moment was that I had been thinking picture, distracted. And so I was not able to fully be grateful in that moment because I was distracted. So that ties back into how being conscious is required in order to be grateful. So the second quality of a Vaishnavi is humility. And these two are also very much intertwined. So when I'm feeling proud, it means that I'm feeling like I don't need anyone else. I have it together. It's me, I'm the doer, I've done this, and I'm feeling proud about myself. But a humble heart is what's required in order to recognize the gifts that others are giving me and the gifts that I'm receiving. It's the acknowledgement of realizing that without the help and the all the mercy I've received, I wouldn't be able to do this activity. Starting from the very basic activities of, even like reading and writing, like what to speak of all the people who taught us how to do those things, and then spiritually, all the people that have brought us here. So humility is required in order to feel grateful, because it's recognizing that I couldn't be here today in this, like doing this service or performing this activity or whatever it is, without all the others who came before me, who allowed me to, who helped me do this. In the Shikshashtakam, there's that famous verse where Lord Chaitanya says that we should chant in a humble state of mind, thinking ourselves lower than a straw in the street, and more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, we can chant the name constantly, right? So offering all respect to others, and then looking for all the people that have done things for us in our lives that have helped us be at this place today. So a humble person doesn't feel deserving of anything. They feel like everything that comes is a gift, right? So if we're entitled, and I think there's kind of that, you could say there's a conversation now of, actually there was a Time magazine some time ago where the title was Generation, I think it was like Generation X, and the subtitle was Generation Me. And there's kind of a growing awareness of entitlement as we grow up with everything that we could want and technology and everything, that we forget to, or we feel like we deserve these things. And so then it's hard to appreciate them, because if you feel like you deserve it, and that it's meant that you're supposed to have it, then when it comes to you, it's just like, oh yeah, that's meant to be. Like, I'm not going to appreciate it. It's just what I'm supposed to have. So you can see how humility and gratitude are completely linked together. And it's a nice thing to reflect on when we're thinking about that verse of Lord Chaitanya. And then finally, the third quality is contentment. And I have here, it's kind of two in one, but they're the same thing: contentment and non-envy. Because when we're content, then automatically, when we feel like we've been given enough, then we're not envious of others. So those kind of work together, but they're connected to gratitude, because And they kind of follow, they immediately follow gratitude. So the other two sort of immediately precede gratitude, and this one kind of follows gratitude very quickly. So what I mean by that is, if I feel like, wow, if I'm focused on all the things Krishna has given me, and I feel like, wow, Krishna, I didn't deserve this, you gave me so much, I'm feeling so content with all the mercy Krishna has given me, then then I'll be able to, when I see, like if I go on Facebook and I see every happy picture of other people, I won't compare my life to others, because I'll feel like that would be an ungrateful thing to do, because that means that I'm not appreciating what Krishna gives me. If I'm looking at someone else's life and thinking, oh, look, they have it all made. They have the, whatever it is, the white picket fence and the happy family and whatever it is that we want. That means that the gratitude is lost. So so gratitude and contentment come together. When I'm feeling grateful, I can no longer feel envious of others. So these are things that we can reflect on, and kind of in your own life, you can think about whether this is true for you. This is a realization I had about how these are linked, and perhaps you'll have further realizations later. Maybe you can see, like, go on social media and observe, maybe you see something that makes you feel like, oh, I wish I had that. And then maybe first reflect on everything Krishna has given you, and then see if that goes away, that envy or that jealousy, I could say. So there's even neuroscience shows that that we can deliberately change the structure of our brain to increase our contentment by constantly reminding ourselves of the things that we're grateful for. And it becomes like a rewiring in the brain of the happiness pathways, right? So if we keep reminding ourselves over and over, then we become content. So even neuroscience backs that up, that relationship. So before we move on to the practical side of it and the interactive side, I want to see whether there are any questions or comments about what we've talked about so far. And you can feel free to either put it in the chat or unmute, I guess. Can people unmute themselves? Yeah. Okay. So let's just see if anybody has anything to share.
I'm so grateful to be here amongst all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Bye.
No question for me, just go ahead, Tiffany.
No, please go.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Shyamala, Kishori, for sharing just such beautiful examples from Shastra, from your own experience, from Srila Prabhupada. It's very inspiring. So I've just been sitting here enjoying, but no questions from me.
Thank you.
And I
would like to just mention something. This is Bhavani. I had jotted down a few things on a piece of paper that were my realizations of gratitude, and I've crossed them all off because you've covered them all. And I think that's amazing. There were things I was going to say, and I thought, oh, you've covered them all. So I feel really privileged to be here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Tiffany, did you have something to share?
Hare Krishna. Yes, I just wanted to, I don't have a question either. I really just wanted to share. I love the comment that you made about you have to be conscious in order to be grateful, and I think sometimes gratitude, because like you said in the beginning, it becomes kind of like a buzzword. We hear it all the time that people don't realize the depth of it. It kind of stays on a superficial level. And when you said, consciousness is required in order to be grateful, it really let me see it in a different way. So I appreciate that. I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned you were able to see it in a new way, because that was my hope, is that I was trying to think of kind of new angles to look at it, because it becomes something I've just heard about gratitude so much that I've become complacent about gratitude. So I thank you for sharing that it's a new way of looking at it. Someone, okay, let's see here in the chat. Would you share the verses again? Okay, so the verse numbers I will share. Let's see. So there is, yeah, so Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 19, Text 36. That's a very beautiful one. And that's one that mentions Kritagya. Then the Dhruva Maharaj one, which is in Canto 4, Chapter 12, 32. And then, let's see. So then there's a really nice, yeah, the one about Krishna being super grateful for any little worship we offer, and that he never forgets it. That's in Canto 10, Chapter 48, Text 26. And then there's one more in a purport that I had referenced. Is, when a living entity offers service to the Lord is immediately satisfied and in return will give even his own self. That's in Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 31. And there's so many. If you ever want to just inspire yourself, you can go on the database, just search the word gratitude or thankfulness. There's different synonyms to gratitude. The word gratitude is not always used, but let's see, like Krishna's satisfaction or things like that. And you'll see there's so many references that are really sweet. Okay, so let's move on to the, oh yeah, thank you Govinda Priya for writing them down there. So let's move on to the practical tips. So, and I had a lot of fun putting all these together. It's just thinking about different ways to deepen our own internal gratitude. So remember that definition I shared with you? The first part of it I had said was the quality of being thankful. So that's what we're covering in this personal gratitude, the quality of being thankful. And the goal of these, like in you could say in kind of the mundane world, the goal of gratitude is to increase happiness or to decrease stress or to feel more connected to people or whatever. And those are fine. They're helpful from a material perspective. They help our body and our mind. But the goal that we're trying to achieve is to decrease the intervals between the times when we're complacent and the times when we're feeling grateful to Krishna. So the intervals between our complacency and gratitude toward Krishna, gradually reducing those. That's the goal of the devotees working on gratitude practices, you could say. There's a nice little quote from the Dalai Lama, and he says that he encourages people to move from counting your burdens to counting your blessings. I liked that little expression. So move from counting your burdens to counting your blessings. Then there's a quote from Rupa Goswami in Padyavali. He says, "O Lord, just as a miser continually collects, counts, and remembers his money, his or her money, in the same way, let us continually collect, count, and remember your holy names." So in connecting this to gratitude, if we look at this quote, so I'll read it again. Just as a miser continually collects, counts, and remembers their money, in the same way, let us continually collect, count, and remember your holy names. And that's from Padyavali. So that connects to being grateful. So he continually collecting the names, continually counting the names, and continually remembering them. Similarly, we can do that with the blessings that we have received in this life. We can continually collect them, and I'll give you some how we can do that, right? I'll give you that in a second. So continually collecting them, counting them, just keeping track of all the mercy we've received, all the wonderful things, and then continually remembering all the ways that we've been blessed. So we can apply his realization about the holy names to all the mercy that we've received. Continually collect, count, and remember them. And one other thing that I really appreciated recently that I heard from Janavi Dasi, Janavi Harrison. So she had some of you might have heard this, a short little, on the BBC, they have these short little clips, I forget the name of it, but in there, she was talking about gratitude. And she said, there's always something to be grateful for. She said, if I can find even a grain of gratitude in my heart, it's precious. It's enough to sprout and keep me going until tomorrow. I'll read that again. If I can find even a grain of gratitude in my heart, it's precious. It's enough to sprout and keep me going until tomorrow. I thought that was so beautiful because sometimes it's hard to think of things. And so she's saying that even if it's a tiny little thing, tiny connection to Krishna, something grateful that we can be grateful for, that can then blossom. It can enhance our Bhakti creeper, right? A creeper of devotion. So now let's look at some practical ways we can do this. So the first idea I had is just gratitude prayer. And this can come through the chanting of the holy names, of course, because that's a prayer of gratitude, right? But I'm specifically thinking about also praying from our heart to Krishna and thanking him for this. For me, this has helped. It's helped me to do this in the evening before bed because it puts me in a consciousness that I feel like then I wake up more, feel closer to Krishna and just on the kind of the grateful side of the bed, kind of if you go to sleep with it, then you'll wake up with it. So what I have found helpful for myself is to go sit in front of my altar. I have Giriraj, and I sit in front of him and I just think back through my day and I thank him for the things in my day that I know I only received from his mercy. And so that also allows us time to reflect on the day and kind of, remember them. And it's just a really nice way to wrap up the day. Prabhupada says in the third canto, chapter 31:18, in the purport, this is another, if you want to jot this number down, this is another really sweet one, 3:31:18. We should always feel very much obliged to the personality of Godhead, for he is always anxious to bring us into the happy condition of eternal life. There is no sufficient means to repay the Lord for his act of benediction. So there's no sufficient means to do that. Therefore, we can simply feel gratitude and pray to the Lord with folded hands. So that's also comforting. We'll never be able to fully reciprocate or fully appreciate, but we can just fold our hands and feel grateful. That's what Prabhupada's saying. And one of my friends actually started doing this recently with her two small children, and she said that they've actually been really enjoying this connection with Krishna before bed. They go in front of their altar and they're like maybe 3 and 5. And for them, they think back on their day and they say, okay, Krishna, thank you for my friend or whatever it is. But it's a way to, from a young age, learn how to connect Krishna to our day, right? To see Krishna's hand in our day. So that's the first idea. And then the next one is connected. It's through writing. And I'm sure some of us are more inclined towards writing than others. I personally love writing, and I've been journaling since I was like 10 years old, a long time. But so for like some of these will work better for, some of these techniques will work for some people more than others. So one of the things that research shows is that to create a lasting change in the brain and to make gratitude your default emotion, you have to practice it not just with frequency, but also with some emotional intensity. So it can't just be, so I think what happens often is there's this trend now, buying a gratitude journal every time before you go to bed, writing down like 5 or 10 things you're grateful for. And it's a wonderful activity. But as we know, materially conditioned mind is complacent. And so anything that we do over and over, it can just become another thing and it's no longer effective. So what this research shows is that to really be effective, you have to almost relive that emotion of that moment. So say for example, you met with a sadhu, some devotee that really inspired you. earlier in the morning. So if you're reflecting on this at night, take a moment, close your eyes, and go back to that and feel what you were feeling in that moment, that and live it that way, like feel the emotion of it. And it says, have an experience of gratitude that lasts at least 20 seconds, feeling the positive emotions in your body and allowing it to become intense. That's how it really helps the brain get in this habit of feeling grateful, as opposed to just taking your book and writing down a list. Kind of, it's almost like the intellectual part's there, but the heart's not there. So by really reliving the emotional intensity, it pulls the heart in, involves the heart. So that's one way to make gratitude journaling more effective. Another technique is to not overdo it. So this is another interesting thing I came across in the research. It shows that for many people, not all, they will, if they do it every day, they'll get kind of complacent. But if they do it only 3 times a week, that it stays fresher, and so they don't adapt to it. Or if they find different ways of, so maybe one day you can journal and the next day you can pray, or something to keep it a little fresh, because we need that. Our brains need that kind of freshness. And then later in a little bit, I'm going to mention to you some ideas about helping with complacency, and I'm going to talk about what to do when things like gratitude journals don't work for you. So keep that in mind, because for some people it just doesn't work. I gave you a few techniques for maybe to help it get a little deeper, but even then some people might find that it's just kind of becomes a robotic thing and it doesn't really help. So the next idea is to, and this is something that I just like to see a show of hands. Does anybody journal? Does anybody write? Okay, so a few people, like just regularly, like once in a while, or so we have like quite a number of people that journal. Yeah. So so this is something that we can do when we're experiencing mercy in our life. Like say we have realizations that come to us from Krishna's mercy. Krishna gave us a realization, or devotees are so kind, or we receive blessings from our spiritual masters, different things, right? If we keep track of those, like you could have, just keep that in your journal somehow. Write those days down, like write those moments. Write your visits to the Holy Dham, like write what that felt like, and keep track of all the mercy. What this does is then later, I've noticed this for myself, that when I'm going through a difficult time spiritually, and what I mean by that is maybe just feeling kind of lethargic or just disconnected or discouraged or whatever it looks like for us, then it helps me to go back to the journals where I was really feeling connected to Krishna. And it reminds me, oh yes, I do have a connection with Krishna. There is a part of me that really wants to be a devotee. And so it's almost like your past self can inspire your current self. And I came to this realization in Kartik last year, a few months ago, because I was rereading a journal I had written when I was in Vrindavan for several months. I had spent several months there, and I reread that journal. I don't reread it that often because I want to keep it. It's like I read it when I keep it sacred. If I read it too much, it kind of, again, like we become used to things. So I read it during Kartik to remember all the mercy I'd gotten, and it was just so inspiring because it kind of helped my current lethargic or sort of maybe feeling disconnected from Krishna. It helped with that. I was like, oh yeah, I do have a relationship with Krishna, and he does care about me, and he is kind, like that. It reminds us. So that's an idea for the future. So if you keep track of it now, then in your future self will appreciate it. Another idea for personal gratitude is to share your stories with others. So sometimes if we're telling someone else something we're grateful for, or something that we appreciated that happened, it makes us think about it in a fresh way. And then also then not just talking about it, but also then actually, for example, what I'm trying to say is, say I'm appreciating japa and I'm thinking, oh, I really appreciate holy names, but my bee bag's just hanging on the wall and I'm not, it's just a thought. What also helps is if you then treasure it by actually taking advantage of it. Like and taking your bee bag and chanting, or I might appreciate all the wonderful lectures that I have on my hard drive, which I have like so many. They're just sitting there, right? And I might appreciate it, but then to really appreciate it further, I would have to go and open one of those lectures and really listen and take advantage of that gift of having those. So also remembering that that gratitude can go just beyond thinking, but also applying. So taking advantage of what we have. And the final thing here that I would like to mention is that sometimes we were talking about how we're quite in this material world, we're quite limited when it comes to feeling intensely grateful, right? We can work on it, we can come better at it, but we have a limited appreciation capacity. And this is something that I heard from Vaisheshika Prabhu, limited appreciation capacity. So Krishna has an unlimited appreciation capacity. But if we recognize that we have a limited appreciation capacity, we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. Like if we can't fully appreciate something. Have you ever had that experience where you're in like the Holy Dham, or you're in a wonderful retreat, like at Govardhan or whatever, and part of you is thinking, gosh, if only I could really appreciate this. I'm just sitting here. I can't really feel it. I really want to. And there's almost like a block because of our materially conditioned body and mind, and maybe we're tired or whatever. So in those moments, if we can just think, okay, Krishna, you're so great. There's no way that I can fully ever appreciate you because Krishna is unlimited. And so to give ourselves a little bit self-compassion as well, and do the best we can, but remembering that Krishna's glories are unlimited. Even Anantasesha can never reach the end of them. So if we do our little part, that's enough, right? If we do what we can to feel grateful. There's a nice verse in the Bible, actually, in Psalm 40, verse 5. It says, Lord, my God, many are the wonders you have done, the things you planned for us. None can compare with you. Were I to speak and tell of your deeds, they would be too many to declare. And that reminds me of how Anantasesha is glorifying Krishna with thousands of mouths and never reaching the end. So let's not be too hard on ourselves if we feel like, oh, I can't fully appreciate, because we, as our limited jiva selves, will never be able to fully appreciate Krishna's glories, because even Krishna takes the form of Lord Chaitanya to appreciate himself more. So we'll just do our part and try to increase our gratitude. Now I would like to talk about dealing with complacency. And we're going to do a little exercise at the end of this. So there's a couple of things we can do. So one is, if we're feeling complacent and we just don't think there's if we're just kind of robotic going about our spiritual life, and we can't realize what we have, we can't appreciate it, there's a few things we can do. One is spending time with newcomers. And I noticed this when I came to Gainesville, the Krishna House. I lived here. I lived at the Krishna House, which is the kind of like the student center next to the campus of University of Florida. And they have Krishna lunch, they have an outreach program, and they have an ashram. So when I lived there, I was seeing a lot of new people coming to Krishna consciousness. And I was rooming with another, I guess you could say, she was a college student. She was a girl, like 20 years old. She was brand new to Krishna consciousness and was my roommate. And she would ask me a lot of questions. And so because I was paired up with her and I was constantly seeing Krishna consciousness from her perspective, her like that glimmer in her eyes, and just all the new people, I would see that the spark in their eyes when they're discovering something about Krishna, or about, even if it's about Prasadam or about devotees or anything that's touching them. Being in that company reminds me of what I have. And I think that this is really helpful for for anybody, but speaking from my own experience, because I grew up in ISKCON, this was especially helpful for me, because when you grow up with something, then it's definitely very easy to take it for granted. So seeing all the people that were coming to Krishna consciousness with fresh eyes was very enlivening. Another thing we can do is take the songbook and read some of the songs of the acharyas. There's one song in particular, Bhaja Hure Mana Shri Nandanandana. So there's one line in there, Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talamala Bhajahu Hari Paranitere, right? So that means that our life is like a drop of water on a lotus petal, which is kind of waxy, you know, they're kind of smooth, and the drop of water sitting on that waxy petal, and at any moment it could disappear. It could be washed off and our life could be over. So just sometimes reading things like that can remind us of the temporary, can kind of jolt us out of a complacency, because we are reminded of the temporary life that we've been given. It's not forever. And so to try to take advantage of the day that we have. Sometimes volunteering, I volunteer at a hospice. Some people volunteer at homeless shelters or hospitals and these kinds of things. And we can bring spiritual, these can go very well with bringing spirituality into those contexts. And they can keep us also grateful for what we have. When we see the potential for suffering in this world, it kind of reminds us of what we have. If we see people who are dying, it reminds us, oh, I'm still alive. Let me take advantage of that day, the time that I have. Now I'd like to tell you about, this is something very interesting in psychology. There's something called the pleasure paradox, and this is connected to complacency, right? The pleasure paradox is that as human beings, we tend to experience more joy and for longer when things come to us unexpectedly and they have a certain mystery to them. Like, for example, you're walking down the street and you suddenly discover a $20 bill, or even a $5 bill, or even $1. There's a certain excitement in that, and like, wow, that can make your whole week. You can feel so excited because it happened unexpectedly, and it has a bit of mystery to it. Like, how did that happen? How did it come to me, right? That will, so the pleasure paradox is that we appreciate that much more than we do, like, say that same week, I was expecting a $1,000 raise from my work. If I was expecting it for months and I knew it was going to be in my bank account on Friday of this week, I will just kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm already used to the idea, and it's no longer something I can feel a lot of gratitude towards. It's just already something that's there. So this is something we need to find a way around, because what happens when I was mentioning that gratitude journals, some people it doesn't work for, because what's happening is you're reliving happy moments. Your brain just kind of gets used to it, and it loses that mystery and thus the pleasure that is experienced through that gratitude, right? So obviously we're not doing this to experience mundane pleasure, but the research is helpful to get another technique to break out of that complacent mind. So for those of you who like psychology, you can read more about that in a book called Redirect: The Surprising New Science of Psychological Change. So if you want to look more into that, by Dr. Timothy Wilson. I haven't actually read the book. I've just read sections of it. So so in that book, he talks about the pleasure paradox. So now we have this problem. So what do we do to keep things fresh? Like, what do we do when I can't appreciate a $1,000 raise because I was already expecting it, but I appreciate a $5 bill because I wasn't expecting it. That seems very difficult to get over. So a technique that psychologists have come up with that I find particularly helpful is something called the George Bailey technique. The George Bailey technique. So some of you might know that movie from way back called It's a Wonderful Life. It's a typical Christmas movie that people watch over on Christmas. And the character's name was George Bailey. And so in short, that's the movie is about this man who's going through life difficulties, and then it just feels too daunting, and he just wishes that he had never been born. And so an angel says, okay, I'm going to help him appreciate his life by allowing him to see his life as if he had never been born. Allow him to see what would have happened if he had never been born. So the movie is all about that. So he's able to view the different things that happens to his mother, now that she, what happened to his mother since he was never born, or this and that, all different things, where all his family members ended up. And so by the end, he's really appreciative of the life that he had, and he wishes so much that he could just go back and be grateful for his life, that the angel allows him to go back and live it, right? So that's kind of the story in short. But the technique is called the George Bailey technique, because there's something to that, where if we picture our life without something, it's a fresh and kind of has a little bit of mystery to it, has a bit of uncertainty to it, so it tricks the brain into then appreciating it more. So instead of just thinking and writing down all the things I have, I'm grateful for, which can become robotic, this is doing the opposite. What if I didn't have this? And somehow I started doing this without even realizing this was a technique with a name. I started doing this years ago when I would feel myself getting complacent in life, in spiritual life. And so what I would do is I would close my eyes and picture myself on a busy street corner in the middle of maybe like New York City, just with a lot of material energy all around, and picturing, what if I didn't have the devotees? What if I didn't have, kind of just everything, all the wonderful gifts of Krishna consciousness kind of vanish, and I'm just in the midst of material energy. And I would picture that, and it would feel, and it would kind of force me to, or kind of jolt me out of this complacency of, oh my goodness, I don't want that. I want Krishna, and so somehow I did that. I came up with that technique for myself in a way that worked. And then recently I discovered that it's an actual thing. So I want to share with you some research that they did on this, which is really interesting. So in one experiment, researchers formed two different groups of people. And with one of the groups, they asked them to write down the story of how they had met their partner, their significant other. The other group, they did the George Bailey technique on, and they had them write a narrative of their story. Let's see, so they wrote a narrative of how their life might have ended up without that person, if that significant person had never come into their life, someone that they loved. And they found, not surprisingly, the results were that the people who had done this reverse way of thinking, like, what if I had never had this person? They reported more happiness with their relationship afterwards than those people who simply wrote about how they had met their partner and relived that experience. So according to the researchers from this study, or actually from Dr. Wilson of the book I told you, The Pleasure Paradox, the pleasure paradox is what explains those different results. So the people who wrote about how they had met their significant other had already told their story so many times before, right? So the brain had gotten used to it. And so telling it again had pretty much no impact. But for those who had to imagine their partners, their husbands and wives suddenly gone, missing from their life, the exercise made their relationship seem surprising and special again, and maybe a little mysterious, the very conditions that prolong the pleasure we get from the good things in life. So it helps them to feel grateful. So I thought that we could do a short little exercise on this and actually try it out. And what I'm going to have you do, and I will do it too, is to pick one person or one place or one event in your life that brings you a lot of happiness, that you feel like, a lot of happiness and satisfaction in having either experienced or the person in your life, and write down. You don't necessarily need to write. You can. What I want you to do is you're going to close your eyes and reflect imagining your life without that person, without that place, or without that event that is very meaningful to your life, that has had an impact on your life. And then after you take a few moments to feel that, really, like they were saying earlier, that emotional connection, really try to feel that feeling of what would my life be like if such and such person if I had never encountered this devotee, my spiritual master, or whatever it is, right? And it can be a place, like if I had never been to Vrindavan, or or an event that happened that was very meaningful. So really, really try to feel that, what that would be like. And then you can open your eyes and jot down a few thoughts that come to mind. And what I would want us to do after is to, actually, we'll just do that, and then we'll see how it goes first, and then we'll come back together as a group. So so we'll do that for just a short, just maybe 5 minutes, not very long. I'm just gonna play a little flute music, and you can just start when you're ready, just closing your eyes and really finding a person, place, or event in your life that is meaningful to you, and then imagining your life without it. Okay, so you can start now. To the computer. So hopefully in that exercise, and this, you could do this more on your own time, maybe journaling the various ways that you might not have had something happen, and then how you would feel if that was gone. Hopefully from this even short experience, you get a glimpse into maybe the emotion that you feel. Like, I know for myself that I feel a sort of a grief or a sadness if I think about certain people missing from my life, or having never encountered them, or if the devotees are gone, or if I don't have, the things that we take for granted. Like, suddenly, what if, imagine all of a sudden we didn't have Bhagavad Gita as it is, or things like that, So hopefully this is another way we can navigate deepening our gratitude to keep it fresh. If anybody wants to share quickly in the chat, if you found that helpful, or you can unmute if you like.
I really love this activity. It helped me a lot. In fact, as soon as you said that, I knew exactly who I thought about. It was my husband. And then tears came to my eyes. I was like, no, I can't even think what it would be like without him. So it was, very, very helpful. And then just to continue thinking about, well, what if we actually hadn't met? And I, never would have done this, or I never would have found devotees, and then my life would be meaningless. And just was like, oh my gosh. So it was very, very enlightening and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
I have an experience that I've just expanded, which was I was married, and I have been divorced for 40 years. And my husband died last October. And I've come in on this from a different angle, because the way I learned to live with my children through the years, there was an awful obstruction there. First of all, there was anger and what have you. Then there was an obstruction, and then getting on with my life. And I suddenly realized last year, after his death, that I have to be grateful to him for the time that I spent with him, and the fact that we had 3 children who are, 2 of them are in Krishna consciousness with me. The other one is very much conscious, but not quite saying that. And it came to me last year, the same as Victoria just said, I started having tears from this, but realized it was from another angle. So this has been a very useful exercise for me, because I'd already started the process of realization of turning things around to gratitude, and it's helped me a lot. he married twice after me, and I've actually now become very good friends with his second wife, who was married to him for quite a lot. Our children are actually communicating with each other. So there's an awful lot that comes from taking that step to be grateful for something that doesn't appear to be something we should be grateful for. And it seems like it opens a door and all this stuff comes out and you see a path because of the gratitude. I have to mention that very unexpectedly, he turned up at the temple and he gave a donation to my guru. And I have never quite understood that, but I accept it as another reason for gratitude.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a really important point that you mentioned about how this can be applied to things that don't seem pleasant at the time as well. And actually, that this is a nice connecting point to looking at gratitude and suffering, because I also wanted to mention that. And then we'll do little breakup groups in a minute because it's already 4:30, time flies. So I want to just cover quickly gratitude and suffering. Like you were mentioning that, finding the gifts in those experiences as well. So we all know the famous story of Queen Kunti, of course, and how the verse where she's saying, let these calamities happen again and again, because she's seen Krishna right in front of her. And so for her, those troubles led to Krishna. And so therefore they became the greatest blessings. And some of the ways that let's look at some of the ways that we can navigate. How can we appreciate suffering? Because at the time, it can be very difficult to recognize Krishna's kindness and mercy during that time. So some of the ways we can do this is, one way is finding the silver lining, right? So looking back, it can be easiest sometimes to do this for things that already happened. So in the moment, it can be more difficult, but if we look back at something, like you were mentioning, Bhavani, Dasi, you were mentioning like 40 years ago, this event happened. And so looking back on it, you're able to see all the ways that led to blessings in your life. And so there's that saying that when you look back, you have 20/20 vision, looking back, right? Hindsight. And suddenly you realize, oh, Krishna's mercy in your life. So that can give us faith that even now, if I look back and I can connect Krishna to those events and see how those led to better things, then I'm able to trust more in the current suffering, that Krishna still cares about me, that he's there. Like Prabhupada with his pharmacy and his family life, basically kind of falling apart and not going the way that would have been ideal. But looking back, we wouldn't have had Srila Prabhupada coming to America if his business had flourished and his family life, like that. I mean, it was all arranged by Krishna to allow for Srila Prabhupada to then spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And there's another story of Srinivasa Acharya and Shyamananda and Narottam, where they were taking the books of the Acharyas, the 6 Goswamis, by ox cart, and they were traveling with them to Bengal and other parts. They were going to distribute and copy them. And these were the original texts, and they got stolen on the way. So you could think, oh my goodness, tragedy. In the moment, they were all devastated naturally, right? But looking back, if you look at what happened, the king who had stolen all those books actually ended up becoming a great devotee and a disciple of Srinivasa Acharya, and the whole kingdom became devotees. And so sometimes it takes patience to realize, what is Krishna doing in this? Like, how is it going to unfold? And waiting, teaching us dependence on Krishna, waiting to see how he unfolds things. It can also, suffering can also shake us awake. Sometimes if we are complacent, if we lose someone, it's not, hopefully we can appreciate before we lose someone. But sometimes tragedies of losing someone in our life, or suffering or illness, can remind us of what we had before, and remind us to take things, to appreciate things. Actually, there's this wonderful book, The Beggar by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and it's the one, Die Before Dying. So in here, he's actually writing this when he was terminally ill with cancer. And so it's very powerful when we're thinking about how to feel grateful when we're suffering. He says here, I have come down with a chronic disease, which is obviously very devastating. However, the extreme inconvenience and pain created by the present situation can spark much more appreciation for the many years I had in the past without illness. So he writes, how happy, appreciative, and full of gratitude I can feel as I recapture and relive the beauty of the past, bringing that beauty, happiness, and satisfaction into the presence. So even when we're suffering, like say the time that I broke my leg in the car accident, it could be a moment of opportunity to remember, wow, I had 2 decades before that time of functioning legs that I just took for granted. So it's never too late to be thankful for what we did have. And then later on in the book, he's talking to his cancer. This is an amazing meditation. Sending love to his cancer. He says, the cancer has helped me better understand the sufferings that others have to endure. I had prayed desperately to become a more empowered agent of change so as to understand their suffering. I wanted the ability to help others deal with, grow from, or move through their pain. Now it is no longer an academic experience, but it is experimental. The seemingly fatal disease has helped me to develop a deeper level of wisdom and compassion far beyond what I normally possess. This has also allowed me to reflect and write with greater sensitivity, with hopes that I will connect on a deeper level with the hearts of my readers. Today, I want to send my love to the cancer, for after all, God does not make mistakes, and he arranges everything for our benefit. Thank you so much, cancer cells, for offering me tough love. And the meditation continues, and each paragraph ends with that. Thank you so much cancer for this and that. And he's finding the gifts in that experience. So if you can get your hands on that book and read some of those chapters when you are struggling, when I'm struggling, if we can read that, it can help remind us, it can help us find ways to feel grateful even in the suffering.
Can you give us the title of the book again?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's the series, The Beggar. So The Beggar is the series. And then the title of the book is Die Before Dying.
Thank you.
Yeah, volume 4, yeah. So I was thinking we could break up into groups here. We'll do a short get together on a group. And before we do that, if you can just take a minute to reflect on a time in your life, looking back, right, the hindsight, looking back at a time in your life when at the time it was happening, you felt like, why, Krishna? Why is this happening to me? And you didn't understand. But that today, looking back at it, you can see how it led you to something deeper, and so on. And so I was thinking if we can take a moment to just close our eyes now, find that, let's just do that for a minute or two, and then we can do the breakouts. I was thinking we could do 3 people or 4, however many you think we can do in a breakout group.
I think 3 or 4 would work. We've got 12 here.
Yeah, so we could do 3 groups of 4, and then everybody could just share. We'll just do a breakout session for 10 minutes, and everybody can share an incident of something that where they were able to see Krishna's mercy in hindsight in a stressful situation. And keep it brief because we only have 10 minutes, so we want to get everybody a chance to talk. So first, let's take a minute, and I'm gonna do my flute music again because it helps us focus, and just think of a time. See if you can find one in your memory. Okay, so hopefully you have at least one idea of something you could share, and whatever's in the group will remain in the group. We'll just keep it confidential between us. And so, yeah, if we could, Vaisheshika Prabhu says, encouraging the heck out of people. So it ties into that, like really telling people while they're still with us, what they mean to us, how they have helped us, what they have done for us. So often I've noticed, I think this might just be one of our human tendencies, is that we'll, after someone passes away, we will then express our gratitude about them publicly, or we will share, like it'll suddenly be, a lot of people will reminisce about how much that person meant to them. And we just need to make sure that we also tell people while they're with us, just to remind ourselves, like, let's not wait till it's over. Of course, in spiritual life, we know relationships are never really over because we're connected spiritually. So even if someone's already departed, we can express our gratitude to that person. And there's actually a nice quote in the purport of the 11th canto, chapter 29:36, where it says, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the fear of separation from Lord Krishna was entering the mind of Uddhava, and thus he tried to maintain his enthusiasm by remembering the Lord's great kindness upon him. He steadied his mind with feelings of gratitude toward the Lord. So if a person is impending, if we have a person in our life whose departure is impending, and we're feeling that separation, or if the person's already passed away and we're feeling those feelings of separation, gratitude can be a soothing balm to the heart. It, of course, will never take away the separation, but it will help us to perhaps have a few moments of smiling between the tears, or like that kind of thing. We're reminiscing about the person and the mercy they gave us and the kindness they gave us and all that. So it's never too late, but if we can try to do it while people are alive, tell them, make them feel good, like that. Prabhupada actually wrote in the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita in a purport, he said that thousands of followers, especially Western youth, are taking part in this Hare Krishna movement, and how safe and happy they feel can be understood from the expressions of gratitude in their hundreds and thousands of letters. And so when I read that, I thought, see, Prabhupada is appreciating the gratitude of he's feeling, when he received those letters of gratitude, it was a reflection of the devotee's happiness in Krishna consciousness. So when we are expressing our gratitude to each other in a way that's culturally appropriate, I know some cultures, they don't do much of that, like, oh, thank you and all that, but if there's different ways of showing love and gratitude, then that other person will feel that, they will feel happy knowing that they have meant something to us and they have helped us in our spiritual journey, in our material journey, both. And then finally, I would like to talk about creating a culture of gratitude within our communities. And this starts, of course, with children, because they're the ones who are going to grow up to be the next generation. So as a community, how can we deepen a culture of gratitude? A few ideas came to mind. We can reflect on who came before us and who paved the way for us to be right now in our position. Who were the ones who struggled? I was asked to write a little piece for the anthology that came out, The Emergence of Women's Voices in ISKCON, over last summer. And I just wrote it was just a short little piece, but in writing that, I was really reflecting on, I had done some editing with the book, so I had read many of the articles, and I was reflecting on how much the first generation of women had sacrificed, and the first and second, the early, like the first few decades of women, the women who lived through those decades, how they had sacrificed so much and how they had experienced so much inconvenience, from others, from misperceptions about what it meant to interact between men and women, and often some even harsh words and treatment and all that. And so in reflecting on that, I was feeling so much gratitude, like, wow, if it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't have been able to have those opportunities growing up of giving class and playing mridanga and leading kirtan, all those things that at a certain point in ISKCON were were not granted opportunities to women. So, but because they fought for the right to serve Krishna, you know, they wanted to everybody to have the opportunity to serve. It leads the next generations give us so much to be grateful for. So if there's ways that we can memorialize the efforts of devotees who have come before us, perhaps we can think about in our own communities, in our temples, would it be possible for us to maybe, like they do in some universities, they have pictures of people, the founders, the people who came first. Who are the ones in our communities who sacrificed to get this temple, or this community started, and to have a little memorial for them, little monument for them, you know, like plaque, some description, something so that it teaches the children growing up that we value the gifts that those before us have given, and we appreciate, and we don't forget. And this will encourage people to serve too, because people, as long as we're in this material world, we all want to feel like people appreciate what we've done, right? It's just a natural tendency of being in this world that we want to feel appreciated. And so when we see that as a community, we value and we recognize and we acknowledge devotees for the services they have done, then we will also feel encouraged to serve more too. And I want to quickly show you, we're coming near the end, but I'm gonna share my screen one more time with you. I'm going to show you something we did in Gainesville, Florida. So we had this, I was part of this, what we called the Krishna Lunch Forever campaign. So Krishna Lunch is a program that the Krishna House had been doing for almost 40 years now in Gainesville, Florida, on the campus, serving prasadam up to over 1,000 plates a day at times. And so we created this monument. We actually collaborated with the university to raise funds for when they renovated the plaza. And because we contributed a chunk of funds, they allowed us to put up this plaque for Srila Prabhupada. And we also got a street sign, Krishna Lunch Lane. And the plaque here, it says, on July 29, 1971, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder of the Hare Krishna movement, addressed students here and inspired them to start Krishna Lunch. Since then, the lunch has nourished the UF community with millions of vegetarian meals. In 2017, Krishna Lunch and its alumni contributed toward the renovation of the plaza. So that was a way to memorialize Prabhupada's, he spoke on the campus, and to mention that Krishna Lunch has been going on for that many decades. And then here, in this next picture, we had also devotees that helped us to raise these funds so that we could get the plaque for Srila Prabhupada. And then we got different benches for different devotees, these little plaques. And one of them, I want to show you an example of what can be done, is we wrote in honor of David Amarendra Prabhu, 1971, and Adrian Gayatri Prabhu Lieberman, who founded Krishna Lunch in 1971, right? So he was actually an alumni too. That's the date. But so we put that there to memorialize these devotees who gave so much to the first beginning of the Krishna Lunch program. And just a little interesting fact is that Gayatri Devi Dasi, she was the one who created the recipe for garanga potatoes. So that's a little interesting fact there. So we have that to be grateful for as well. So that's just an example, and maybe like on our own, we can brainstorm ways in our communities, how we can create that culture, how we can encourage children. We can have activities with children to help instill this habit. And we can, when we go to, well, let's see, there's a comment here from Tiffany. I know a woman who went to university, but now lives in New Jersey. Oh, she lives in New Jersey now, has just come to Krishna consciousness. Her fond memories of the Krishna Lunch devotees brought her to Krishna consciousness. That's wonderful. Wow. Yeah, so that's really great. And one other thing in connection to this culture of gratitude is, especially like I mentioned, growing up in ISKCON, if we can somehow instill this in young children, because when you grow up with something, it's so natural to become complacent. I know from my own experience, I would go to Sunday programs, just eat the prasadam, and take it for granted, like, oh, it's always there, always wonderful food, or always wonderful kirtans, so on. So if somehow we can create a culture of giving back, teaching children to give back, noticing all the ways that people have contributed to our spiritual experience. So instead of going to a festival and taking a plate and just going home and just taking, let's ask ourselves, am I being a taker, or am I, when am I taking and when am I giving? Like, am I just taking, or am I also reciprocating? And so this can be a question that we instill into the next generations as well. Growing up, they can think, when am I going to the temple and just taking? And if I am, let me find ways, like maybe they can help cut some vegetables, or maybe they can contribute by serving the feast, or whatever it is, or tithing to the temple, right? Tithing a certain amount of money. Somehow, in action of gratitude, creating that community of giving back. And I would like to leave you with this really beautiful quote in connection to, this was actually, we didn't quite get there, but I also wanted to talk about sharing the gifts of Krishna consciousness as an act of gratitude and paying it forward, basically. So Prabhupada, in that vein, there's this beautiful quote that I want to leave you with because it's just so touching. And Prabhupada says there's, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 19, in the purport. Anyone preaching the mission of the Lord in the line of the Brahma Sampradaya, so anyone sharing the gifts, right? Sharing the gifts of Krishna consciousness is always dear to the Lord, and the Lord, being satisfied with such a preacher of the authorized Bhakti tradition, shakes hands with him in great satisfaction. Shakes hands with the devotee in great satisfaction. So I found that very touching. Prabhupada's using our colloquial, cultural, like we shake hands when we're appreciating someone. So he's saying Krishna will shake your hand. And so we can reflect on that. Krishna will be grateful when we have created that culture of gratitude, when we then are so filled up with appreciation that we want to share it with others, and we want to just constantly demonstrate to others how grateful we are. So on that note, I want to thank all of you for being part of this 2-hour Sangha and having me, and I feel very, very thankful to be here. And so I'll turn it over now to see what is kind of, yeah.
Thank you so much, Shyamala Kishori. This has been a wonderful session, an incredible 2 hours. Your talk has just been peppered with incredible, deep wisdom and realizations. And I'm sure I can speak for all of us when I say we're extremely grateful to be here. Maybe we can throw our hands up like Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj had said. We can give Shyamala Kishori a Haribol if we're happy to be here.
I'm happy to be here too.
Yeah. So thank you again for joining us and all of the love and dedication you put into this wonderful 2-hour session.
Thank you very much, Shyamala Kishori. Thank you so much.
Before we cut out, I did want to mention a little bit about our next session. So, well, actually, next event, not next Sangha, but we have next Saturday, we'll be continuing the Bond of Love interview series. If you don't know already, The Bond of Love is a beautiful book written by hundreds of Srila Prabhupada's female disciples about their unique interactions with him. It's really a gem. And we've been interviewing a few of these special spiritual daughters throughout this time to promote the book. So next week, there's an interview on next Saturday, January 16th at 9 a.m. Pacific time with Her Grace Shruti Rupa Devi Dasi. Definitely not to be missed. It'll be streamed. You don't have to register. It'll be streamed on the Vaishnavi Ministry North America's Facebook and also our YouTube page. So I hope to see you all tune in there as well. And if there's anything that any last words, Govinda Priya or Tiffany, you'd like to share, please do.
I just wanted to add that our next Sangha is February 13th, and we will have Rukmini Devi Dasi sharing Brahma Samhita with us. So please come back for that as well. Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify that Rukmini is a wonderful a second generation, not Rukmini, Srila Prabhupada's disciple, but Rukmini, second generation from Columbus. And she sits on the Bhakti, she sits on the, the Shastric committee for the GBC. So she's very, very well versed in Shastras and a great inspiration for studying Srila Prabhupada's books. And I want to express my gratitude not only to all of you for coming here, to Shyamala Kishori for such a wonderful presentation, but also to Victoria and Tiffany who are really heading this, the Virtual Vaishnavi Collective and putting in so much time and effort to bring, the best and really wonderful, meaningful sessions. So if you have any suggestions, we're always open to improvement and suggestions and corrections. So feel free to, maybe Tiffany can write our email address over there. Please feel free to send us a little note of any sessions you would like to see. Subscribe to our website, because that way there's always a link for a survey. If there's any topic, any pressing topic that you want to discuss in the Association of Vaishnavis, we're always willing to include that. And in any way you want to become a part of the team and want to volunteer some time, there's always a possibility for that too. So thank you very much. And over back to Victoria and Tiffany.
I think that's it from us. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Vancha
Krishna.
Kopa Tarubhyascha Pita Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada ki
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all for being here.